thought I'd been a little too tight on the schedule and moving things along because we knew we had a tight schedule. We could easily run this a third day. Easily. I mean, there's a list of just 5 standing professors that I haven't even called. But I could have, because we already had a great group. Tell me who we do not have speak here. They're all great. Thank you for all the speakers. The last part is sort of what is a rule in life. Life is short, eat dessert first. Well, this is the dessert. We're going to have a panel discussion with 4 experts who've been watching the scene for a long time, or very broadly. And we're going to start them off as a panel. Each talking 5 minutes or so. I will be saying my own comments too.
About that.
But then we'll open it up. We'll have them talk amongst each other for a bit, and then we will open up that mic. And you don't have to answer a question. Usually the panel is the panel in question. We have so much good knowledge in here that if you want to make a short comment, please do. The question is, where do we go from here? We spent 2 days talking, thinking, reading, discussing. Where do we go from here? And I've just got 4 comments here. 1, become a poll worker.
Yeah.
This is the most important thing you do. If you haven't done it, this is your introduction. This is your course on how these elections are run. 2, and this happens more in California than around the other country, but the Voting Rights Task Force has faced them 4 bills for internet voting. We've won every damn time. And 3 efforts at ballot initiatives. But the rule in our group is that California is a big target. If they can get internet voting here, and this is the biggest threat of them all, if they can get internet voting into California, it's over. So when that happens, drop everything else and go up and beat it. And we've done that. And we just again had good news from Steve that we're going to do something like that with the Iowa and Nevada caucuses, and we'll kill it again. And this cannot stop. Once they get in, there's so much temptation, ease of use, lower costs, yada, 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 that you're not going to get them out. So we have to drop everything and block them from the get-go. Part of our success has been find good people to be election officials. The biggest thing that the Voting Rights Task Force, and this was started before I even joined, did was to get Deborah Bowen elected Secretary of State. There were people who, almost 2 years before the election, identified Senator Bowen as somebody who's smart, ethical, everything you want in an election official. They sat down with Deborah Bowen and said, we want you to run for Secretary of State, we will be behind you. And she did, and we were, and we had, I don't know, close to 1,000 activists across the state. At the Democratic Convention, which in California was the pivotal point, she got an 81% approval vote from the delegates. Nobody else came close at any office. We're all over the place. We got her elected, and that made all the difference. And then when you go on and find internet voting, she's there. So get good people. Ditto for your local election officials. Your election council, your registrars, whatever you want to call them. Some of them are elected in California too. Some of them are appointed. Go find them ahead of time. Don't sit around and wait. Go find them and then start a campaign to get them in. And my last comment will be, there is a lot of garbage out on social media. I'm going to name a name, Richard Charney. He posted in June 2016 Smoking gun, California stole the election from Bernie. His proof was that he compared the Haines County counties to the Machine County counties in California. What's wrong with that? We don't have Haines County counties in California. That's the one I can prove easily. This is Richard Jordan. About Munster. It takes some talent and expertise to go respond to him, but he's just been posting lately. This is fake statistics. And as we've seen, we cannot let that pass. So especially if you can respond to him, do so. Because we just cannot let the misinformation stay out there. There's a couple of other people, but he's been the biggest one. I'm sorry to have to mention his name, but there it is. Okay. Barbara Arnwine.
Oh.
Where should we go from here?
All right. I didn't know I'd be first, but it's okay. First of all, thanks everyone. This has been a remarkable conference, and it's been so good to meet so many good people. Of course, it's Sunday, so it's happy birthday, Fannie Lou Hamer Day. And burning up the social media with tributes to her, and that's beautiful. Next steps. First of all, many people need to drop the false dichotomy between voter suppression and election security. I've heard some nonsense because the reality is that you have to do both. If you have to fight voter suppression, right and left, and you have to fight for election security, right and left, or neither community wins what we want. I mentioned, Prince George's County. Prince George's County is one of the largest Democratic counties in the country, right? But its Board of Election has 4 Republicans on it and 1 Democrat. Because the governor of Maryland appoints all of the Board of Elections in Maryland. And there's no accident that even with all the reforms that have taken place that we've celebrated here in Maryland, that 30,000 people probably didn't vote because they didn't give the ballots. The paper ballots, there were no ballots to be found at 13 voting sites in Prince George's County. They ran out as early as noon, 1 o'clock, did not get ballots until 3 hours later, knowing that that would totally suppress the vote. So we got to be very conscious that even when we fight for excellent reforms, that these voter suppressors are right ahead, thinking about how else do they destroy the vote. So in Calvert County, Maryland, didn't get a lot of publicity, but Calvert County announced on the Friday before the Tuesday election that they were going to cancel all public transportation. On election day.
No way.
You think I'm kidding? Look it up. Google it. Calvert County, Maryland, canceled public transportation. So somebody calls me, of course, on that Saturday afternoon and says, "Why have you seen this?" So we started calling everybody, got everybody involved, and we put out a notice by Sunday that they were reversing themselves. But this is the reality of what we're fighting, that is that intense, that ugly. If you think I'm kidding, see the letter that Elijah Cummings, Cardin, Van Hollen, Raskin sent to Governor Hogan about the voter suppression and the voter problems that occurred in Maryland. They just sent the letter about a month ago, so it's not that old. So this means that besides destroying false dichotomies, we got to build our community commonality. We should have in every state where there are voter justice movements, there has to be strong presence of this community. We should never have the situation where people have no knowledge of what they should be fighting for ballot security. They have no clue about the whole issue of connections to the internet, et cetera, but they don't. I mean, I sat in a whole hearing a couple months ago in Pennsylvania, where one of their big arguments regarding, because, we're fighting them to obviously fix the problems with machines there, and the governor's finally doing something. Anyway, not enough. But when we were talking, one of their big arguments about why everybody should chill and not worry was because, quote, they're not connected to the internet. That was their number one argument. So, had I been at this conference earlier, hey, it might have been a different response. So it just shows you the criticality of our alignments. And those alignments, like John Brady said, have to be conscious and deliberate. I mean, he deliberately and consciously reached out to Anthony Spearman. He knew that the NAACP needed to be an ally. That kind of consciousness and deliberate action is important. Groups aren't involved because they don't care. Actually, the voter justice community is probably more attuned, more concerned about these issues than you ever would think. The problem is that there's no interaction, that people assume that because they're not active that they don't care. They're not active because they don't know how to be involved. So it's all of this, and when you interact with our community, please be respectful. You don't know the activists, you don't know the history of the folks that have been on these front lines and fighting forever in this battle. Be respectful to them and understand that you may not know, just like I may not know everyone in this community. So there's a real requirement for respect, because you're not going to get anywhere without it. The National Bar Association, the largest African American bar association, is going to have a 50-state strategy coming up for 2020. We're developing that strategy now. And we're talking about, having allies around so many of these issues, like ballot images, the whole fight. That's where we need to be. Those are natural allies. There are so many natural allies that can be part of so much that I've heard today and yesterday. So we should definitely strive there. Give no ground, concede nothing. Now, of course, that's what we taught as lawyers in court, in litigation. But it's true of our fight here, that you give no ground, you concede nothing. I think our movements have made huge mistakes in conceding all kind of ground that we should not concede. And that we're going to have to be so much smarter about fighting everywhere and fighting well and fighting strategically. And part of that means that we got to be really good on fighting voter purges. It worries me that there's been so much concession to the 17 million people purged in the last 6 years. Obviously, 8 to 10 million probably are wrongfully purged. And we need to understand that when you are purged and you go to vote and somebody tells you can't vote because you're not on the voting list, that doesn't mean that people are going to show up next time at all. So it really means that you're not only purging them, you're probably alienating them forever from the voting process. So we need a rebuild strong movement to capture people, to get those lists, to reach out to them. That's us, because the state's not going to do it. They won't even tell people they've been purged. That's our work. And that's where we need to be. We got to be firmly in that battle. We got to stop all these purges. There's a lot we can do that we're just not doing. It's shocking how absent we are in this matter. The other thing, my organization, we're going to have a 21-state strategy, working our partnerships within the communities. Like I said, my whole thing is if you can't help to build locally, then don't do it. Make local groups stronger. Everything we do should be about strengthening, making them smarter, better, more effective And yes, they need our help. Yes, they need people to come in and add strength and possibilities, but never leave a community weaker than when you went in. So that's something that we got to really consciously think about and do. Again, Ray Kennedy had a really great talk with me, and I'm so glad we got to meet about this whole idea about building permanent independent voting rights infrastructure. I think that's the ultimate long-term goal. We need people to be election officials. We need people to be poll volunteers. We need people to be educated and informed voters. All of that goes to the issue of building permanent independent voting rights infrastructure. If you haven't had the pleasure of reading it, if you want some good news, I really think that one of the best decisions I've seen from any court this year is the decision in the North Carolina courts in Common Cause versus Lewis. If you haven't read that opinion, do. It's gorgeous. It's one of the best, when I read it, I honestly thought I had walked into an alternative universe. That's how, I'm going like, this is North Carolina, you gotta be kidding me. And then they're saying things like, the Declaration of Rights of North Carolina under their Constitution and their Equal Protection Clause equivalent, their First Amendment equivalent, is better when it comes to protecting the rights of voters than the national Constitution. That's what it says. That's how strong an opinion it is. So when it comes to partisan gerrymandering, that should become our mantra. It should become part of our strategy toolkit. Lastly, June 2020, be part of the conference that we're working on. We should have a whole serious track for all the people who are going to come and participate on these issues. It's hard for me sometimes to say election integrity because as people know that in the African American community that term is used for voter suppression. And there still are some serious, ugly right-wing groups who use that term. If you think I'm kidding, look at North Carolina. There's a whole group there called the Election Integrity Coalition or whatever it is. That is totally awful. It's awful. And it's a voter suppression group. So we need to think, language, history, interactions moving forward, etc. October 17, 2020, if you're in DC, please join us. The ultimate answer to everything is unity. The ultimate answer to everything is, as Frederick Douglass said, the young men saw him in 1895 and said to Frederick Douglass, what do we do? What do we do? We're losing. You fought the Civil War. You fought against slavery. You've done everything you can. You've just come in from a women's suffrage movement, organizing. But our people are losing. We're being re-enslaved. Slavery by another name is horrible. We're being criminalized. The police are killing us. We can't get jobs. We're being demonized on the press. What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? And they say that Frederick Douglass looked the young man in the face. And he was quiet for about all of a number of minutes. And he looked the young man in the face and he said, agitate. 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 And he turned around and went into his house, and the next day he died. You see, that's our message. That's where we belong. That's the work we got to do. People are inspired out here. They want to be inspired. They want to do the work. They want to know how to be the best agitators they can be. So let's get in there and do it. Thank you.
I don't mind. I'll be quick. Okay. So there's a couple key things that I want to talk about. One is about audits. There's been a lot of talk about audits. And Jan Van Doren in particular has always emphasized to me that audits have to be done independently. There's so much going on in terms of election officials auditing themselves. And so in New York, we're working on a piece of legislation for risk limiting audits, and one of the key components is we're trying to figure out how we can have an independent state auditing board conduct those audits. So I encourage people to think about legislation, get in touch with attorneys. We're working with a team of attorneys there that's helping us. You need attorneys to write legislation, and figure out if you're going to do audits, how to do them correctly. I think that we need more election lawyers. We don't have enough really good election attorneys, and that's something that we need to seed and cultivate and bring to fruition. So if you know attorneys who have potential, encourage them to, to work with us. I'm going to encourage people to do public records requests for documents, especially for ballot images or ballots. You would be surprised what you find. I did public records requests for the ballots in Florida in Tim Genova's race in 2016, and in almost every precinct, the number of people who voted did not match the number of cast ballots. There were more than 1,000 vote. There was more than 1,000 vote discrepancy total. I think there were only. I have to look at the document again. There might have been less than 20 precincts out of hundreds of precincts where the number of people who voted matched the number of cast ballots, and they were off by a lot. So, and we got that just by requesting the list of people who voted and requesting the, I'm trying to remember what exactly we requested. We basically compared the number of, all we had to do was look at the online data actually. We got a list of the number of people who voted from the registrar, and we compared that with their online results, and we were able to show those discrepancies and put it in the spreadsheet. And you just can't argue with that kind of thing. So when you think like, oh, what am I going to find? What really could be wrong? You would be surprised how often basic things are not adding up. So I encourage you to do those public records requests and go ahead and take the time to make those comparisons. And the other thing, there hasn't been much talk about this, and it's a little bit complex, but I think you guys are certainly able to handle it. There are systems in the pipeline that this community really needs to be thinking about, and they're called E2E systems. And that's for end-to-end verification. And they are basically cryptographic systems. They are ballot marking devices, and the way that they secure the vote is by encrypting it. And then the voter will basically be able to go online, for example, and look at a hash that will confirm for that voter that their vote was counted as intended, according to the cryptographic system. But it's not a transparent system at all. One of those systems, I believe, is being developed by Microsoft. And so and there have been huge carve-outs in like the voluntary voting system guidelines 2.0, the next generation, to make sure that these end-to-end verification systems will be allowed. Because there's a lot of kind of big corporations behind them. Microsoft in particular has been working on it for years. It's a complicated conversation, but this community really needs to be aware that that's in the pipeline. So those are my just points for things to think about and things coming up.
I will throw in a comment about the end-to-end systems. One, it's hard, often you try this with a voter to go online to see that the machine reports that you voted the way you voted. What it cannot report is, were all the other votes right? Was the total right?
Right.
And these are paperless systems. We still have to stay with hand-marked paper ballots. Lori Grace, some of you may not know, okay, Jenny Cohn.
Go to watch it.
Hi there. So I'm a little frustrated. Is this working? Okay. I'm a little frustrated because I actually have an article that I wrote on Medium called Election Security Goals, and it has a synopsis at the end, which lists, I think, fairly comprehensively what I think are the goals that we need, and I tried to bring it here, but apparently copy centers are closed on Sundays. And I was going to bribe the woman at the front desk here to let me make copies, but she was talking to somebody and I can't really do that. So in any event, I do have a pretty tight idea of what it was in my article anyway, but if you want to see it, it's on Medium under Jennifer Cohn, and it's called Election Security Goals, and a number of my other articles are there too. But I think we really need to work on tightness in messaging And in particular, I spoke about this yesterday, but hand-marked paper ballots, I think it's critical that people understand that prefix, the hand-marked prefix is a necessity, and that you correct people when they say, and a lot of the scientists do this, and a lot of the National Election Integrity groups do this, and I don't think they have thought through the impact of using phrases like voter-marked paper ballots, voter-verifiable paper ballots. Those are all insider terms that can mean ballot marking devices, the types of ballot marking devices that we don't want. So clarity in messaging. Hand-marked paper ballots tell people they need that prefix, that no, voter-marked paper ballots is not the clever insider way to say hand-marked paper ballots. It actually just screws everything up. It makes it confusing. So here are, I even tried to come up with an acronym a while ago. It didn't work all that great, but it was HTH NP3. And what, for everything that, more or less covering everything that I think we sort of need. The H is for hand-marked paper ballots. T is transparent chain of custody. Within the transparent chain of custody, I include ballot images. I think that's a good way to try to keep track, for the public to try to keep track of the chain of custody. The third H is hand audits. And those have to be robust, by the way, which we've heard from a number of people. The one that has the robust type of manual hand audit that has the most traction right now, and probably is the one that we should be advocating, because I don't know of any other robust manual audit out there, is risk limiting audits, which we heard Professor Philip Stark talk about yesterday. Okay, so that's HTH. Then I have an N, which is no modems or remote access. So those should be banned and removed. So that's the N. And then the P3, I have 3 Ps. One is paper voter rolls at the polls as a backup for the voter registration systems. Slight problem in California, in some of the counties, and probably elsewhere in the United States, moving to these large polling centers. Apparently you can't really do backup paper voter rolls there, which is a problem. And I asked Dean Logan online this very question, and he wouldn't answer, and a few other people, but finally I got the answer. I got the answer somewhere, I don't remember who told me, but no, you can't really do the backup voter rolls, paper voter rolls. But anywhere where you have polling places and can do it, you should be asking your election officials to provide those, and I really wish this had been something that made it into federal legislation. So far it hasn't, but it should be there. In any event, we can advocate for it at the local level. All right, so that is the first P. I have 2 more Ps. Next one is published precinct totals. And it goes with the third P, which is published reported results. And this is so that we can do the type of comparison that Benny Smith was able to do to, to such devastating success in Tennessee. And it's being done in Georgia as well, where you compare the precinct totals with the reported totals. Not everywhere posts the precinct tapes. And not everywhere posts the reported totals. They have to be broken down by category. It's all, so you can do sort of an apples to apples comparison, the precinct results on one end with that precinct on the other end. So they need to, it can't just have, in other words, like a lump, the reported totals can't be a lump together, early voting, mail voting, election day. It has to actually break out election day and have the precincts on there, right? And then you can do that sort of, because that's something that citizens can do. It doesn't replace a comprehensive audit, which is what we really need as our ultimate goal. But we also, in case we don't get our ultimate goal, we need sort of a plan B to get us through 2020. And organizing people to compare the precinct totals with the reported totals, that can detect anything that happens after the totals leave the precincts. It will not tell us if the precinct totals themselves were accurate, but at least it can tell us if there was any manipulation, at least in theory, I think it can, if there was any manipulation at the central tabulators, which are those central, those aggregate all the precinct totals, and those are sort of the treasure chest for wannabe malicious actors. So, and then I'm going to add on an S to my HTH MP3, I'm going to add an S, which is subpoenaing the vendors. I really, really do think that we should pressure our members of Congress, and by that I mean really the House in particular, because there we have the Democratic majority, which might actually do this type of investigation. The pressure has already, sort of the groundwork has already been laid with Representative Zoe Lofgren, who is in the House Appropriations Committee. She's the head of that. And I recommend emailing her and encouraging her to subpoena the vendors to tell us who owns them. And that it's, and emphasize we're not only concerned about foreign ownership, it is certainly possible to have corrupt domestic ownership, and the public has a right to know. And, you know, there's a reason why people have floodlights outside of their house. It's because it deters crime, and I think we need to put the floodlights on these vendors to deter any potential funny business. I'm not saying for sure that there is anything, but, you know, it's stupid for us to assume, to bet our democracy on the notion that there's nothing nefarious going on there. And so I think that's, oh, I did have one other idea. Postcards for voters. I don't know if this group exists off of social media, but there's a group called Postcards for Voters, and I really think that the election security community can use this to reach out to voters with things that they can do as individuals to protect their votes, including asking for a hand-marked paper ballot at the polling place. In many places you can get a hand-marked ballot even if your polling place is planning to use BMDs or DREs or whatever for a touchscreen of some sort for most voters. So you can inform voters of different things they can do, also checking their own voter registrations, and bringing, you know, maybe bringing a photo or a screenshot of proof that they were registered as of the day, you know, before they headed out to the polling place. That sort of thing I think can be incredibly useful, and I'm sure there are many other things that we can do via postcards to voters, but I really think that that's getting the information to people is important, and it's difficult, and I do not think that the media is our partner in this particularly. There are certainly some refreshing exceptions. Lulu just did a fantastic article.
Yes.
I would say some of my own articles are really good, but I don't do them that often. It takes a lot out of me actually to write them.
Yes, they are.
Thank you. So, but I don't think the media is our partner in getting some of this information out to the voters. And there are things that even if all is lost and we don't get hand-marked paper ballots and we don't get the manual audits, I'm not one to say give up. I think that we can still do what we can do, and there are always things we can do to make it more transparent, even up to Election Day. So, thank you.
The fourth panelist is Chloe Grace, whom I've known for at least 10 years. She's been a local activist and doing things behind the scenes that I can't talk about that have had national impact. Darcy works behind the scenes, but we're glad to have her here.
Thank you. I actually work both behind and above. And I just wanted to let you know that I've been involved since 2003 with Bev Harris, and I helped fund the movie Happy Democracy. And I got exposed to this whole world in a very early time. And as I watched in 2004 the votes change after midnight, I had this deep sinking feeling. And then later I worked with Bob Petrakis, I worked with Audit the Vote to try to turn things around, and really got involved and became aware of the huge issues around elections, and have continued. I want to say a few other things about myself, just because I'm going to tell you, I'll tell you ahead of time, that I'm a person who helped start the Election Integrity Committee at Threshold Foundation, which funded this conference, among other things, and quite a lot of other things. And so I want you to know that I have been involved in many different things. I work with Fred Kimberlin, Protect the Vote, work with supporting and protecting whistleblowers, started the Institute for American Democracy and Election Integrity, which is nicknamed TrustVote.org, and it's still around. We're doing also now TrustVote.TV, because I happen to love YouTubes. But we're going to show some very key things and work. I continue to work with Bob Petrakis and the Free Press all the time. So I also was involved with looking at the distortion of the Bernie Sanders votes in the primary election in a very significant way. Well, those are a few things. Also, I really reached out to you, Virginia, and also to Carolyn Cernich for the Trachtenberg system, for her method of counting the votes, to show you that the registrars are in a very key position. And I wanted to bring forward and try to attract registrars to support election integrity as a quality of life opportunity for them. Because it's wonderful, as Carolyn was telling me when you walk down the street, that she was the most popular elected political official in Humboldt County. You know, and so I see this as a, you know, a whole complex, a whole web of different things that are a part of it. The media, the election registrars, the exit pollers with Edison Natofsky. I was involved in funding a challenge with Bob Petrakis to Edison Natofsky. Of course, we weren't successful. I mean, they were a huge organization, and they sent us to Jones Day or something,
Jones Day.
Is that what it is? That we had to supposedly fight them. So we backed out, but I did expose, together with Bob, that the exit pollers were just trying to keep their business together and massaging the results to keep on being chosen by the media and the Democrat and Republican parties, you know, to do these exit polls, okay? So it's a big, you know, it's a web. So anyway, aside from that, now, having described this, yesterday when I knew I was going to have to talk about where do we go next, I actually felt quite overwhelmed. And Kim Zetter's presentation was particularly an issue for me, and John had seen, we had all seen the, you know, the modems in Wisconsin, and reading about the different modems. I can't remember everybody who talked, but I think that Lulu and Emily are bringing forward some very wonderful ideas about educating volunteers, because this is a nice thought. When I wound it back to how we were in 2003, I remembered all of a sudden I was having to convince people that there was actually a problem. And people would walk away and think I was a nut, you know? So this is great that you're all here, and then you're all connected with others. So I do want to say, before we go into our question, that I am open to the people at Threshold Foundation said, sponsor as many things as you think are important. We want a personal letter for each one, you know, this kind of thing. So, and they're an invitation-only funding group, and they're not huge, but they're reasonable. And then, you know, I myself do some things, so I just wanted to let you know that, and I will hand out cards to people who want it. You know, and then we can dialogue to see if I can send it on to Threshold. And I really believe in every single person that is presented here. It's so gratifying. Oh my God, it's so gratifying to see how we've grown and how public support press has grown. I can't tell you how important you all are to our democracy. And I thank you so much.
All right, first dibs. Do any of the panelists have any more comments or questions for the other panelists?
Oh, I have a comment, which is I mean, I have been told if you want to reach out to Congress, that phone calls, by the way, are absolutely the most effective way to do this, and that emails have they get so many of them, and maybe they have lost some of their, do you disagree with that? I mean, certainly it's better than not doing it at all. And I have had many people send emails. That's partly why I actually had someone who works in Senator Biden's office told me that if I want to have a bigger impact, and it was pertaining to election security, that having people make phone calls and handwritten letters, also that too. And I do think there is sort of a pressing issue with this funding going on, and there are a lot of people still sending out, to their voter list, telling them just to press for more funding, and I think that we need to make phone calls that say we want funding tied to specific election security requirements, including hand-marked paper ballots, no barcode voting, manual audits, no remote access, no internet. Anyway. And I was told specific people to reach out to, by the way, are the ones that Democrats endorsed Mitch McConnell's funding only for the corrupt vendors bill. Just throw money at them. And unfortunately, one was Chuck Schumer, which surprises me a bit. He and Hillary were the only two who opposed the Help America Vote Act, which did the same thing. Just threw money with no election security requirements, but apparently he's had a change of attitude or approach. So Chuck Schumer signed on to this, and so did, Leahy? What was his first name? Senator Leahy. Patrick Leahy and Senator Coons. Those were the three. And I was actually asking people to call and tell them to kill the bill, which I don't think is a bad idea, but if that's sort of uncomfortable for you, and I can see how that might be, just call up and say we want that money tied. It has to be tied to election security requirements, handwritten paper ballots, manual audits, no remote access, no internet. Anyway, thank you.
I would never respectfully disagree with Jenny on telling people to kill that funding, because there's groups that have worked really hard to get that funding, in particular the Secure Vote Network with Public Citizen, and they are not utterly naive. They know that they need requirements, and they're working to get the requirements that were passed in the House into the Senate bill. I don't know if they'll succeed, but I think that there is a certain amount of respect that has to be given when we're getting national groups on board now, like Stand Up America, Public Citizens. They've driven tens of thousands of comments and calls to Congress, and it's important to work cooperatively with them, even if we disagree with their messaging. I think it's important to try to change their messaging, but not necessarily just.
I did not say to call up and say Secure Vote's screwed up for calling just for funding, although I may personally think that, and I do personally think that, and I wasn't naming names. Lulu named the name. I was not naming names, but fine, don't kill the bill. But I'm not the only one who thinks this was a mistake, okay? I am not. And there are people way above me who thinks this is a mistake to be having people call their congresspeople and say funding. It's not just me, it's a mistake, and they're not working cooperatively. The suggestion that we have to working cooperatively means letting them do what they're doing. They're not listening to me. I warned about this before they did it. They never listened to me. They never even acknowledged that I said anything. I say it into a void. I'm a lawyer, for goodness sakes. I did negotiations, lots of them. This is a terrible negotiating strategy. You don't just ask for the lowest common denominator and then try to get the requirements later. And I do see that they're trying to dial it back a little bit, actually. I see that they are starting to say, okay, well, how about some guidelines? Well, that kind of sounds a little bit like HAVA, too. We got guidelines with the Help America Vote Act, and I guess what they were voluntary and they were crap. If we're going to get anything through, we don't need to name names. I wasn't going to name that group. But we need tight messaging, and we need to tightly always say hand-marked paper ballots, manual audits, no internet, at the very least, and no freaking barcodes. And we need to do it tightly, and we need to, it's on my shirt, we need to do it every time. And if these groups are out there and they're not doing that, I don't know what they're doing. But they're setting it back, in my opinion.
I agree with that messaging completely, and I think the strategy is to contact those groups and advocate to them to improve the messaging. I totally agree with every single one of those stipulations that you listed, and I think we need a real campaign to these larger groups to improve the messaging and the demands.
And by the way, these same groups, they use voter marked paper ballots all all the time, and it drives me insane. And I do use my Twitter platform because they never listened to me when I had a small platform or non-existent, and they still don't listen to me now that I have over 100,000 followers. But I think they notice now, right? And I try to correct them every time, and every time it's not like they disagree with me and say, oh no, this is the proper way to say it. They just ignore it. So yeah, it would be nice if other people would maybe talk to them and suggest some discipline and messaging that when you call, I mean, if they want to advocate for ballot marking devices, at least let's be clear about it, right? Don't say voter marked and have half the people think you're talking about hand marked. So they should really be, we don't need ambiguity, and if we're going to move the ball forward, ambiguity is not the way to go. We need clarity, and we need to know what the different groups are advocating. And if they're not sure, then they should say they're not sure. And then, you know, you can make up your own mind, but the message should be hand marked. It needs a prefix, hand marked. Anyway, carry on.
Yes.
Okay, just one more comment here, and Lynn, I think, sort of mentioned this in her talk. The Voting Rights Task Force is going up to Sacramento at least 100 different days. And one of the things we've done is after you get done with a committee hearing, or whomever you got appointments with, is we will especially look down at the list of members of the Elections Committee in the Senate and the Assembly, and just go in and knock on the door. Walk in and say, we want to talk to somebody about elections or this election bill. And you can do that. And it's a good way to start getting your message in there. Just knock on the door, walk in, we want to talk to somebody about this election bill or election security or something. Do it. Anybody else in the panel?
Now let's get to the presentation.
Go.
Yeah, I'll make mine doing the questions.
Go.
All right, well, thank you so much for your time and the important work that you guys are doing. I just wanted to...
Turn the mic. Turn the mic. No.
So, I agree with basically everything you guys said, but I did want to have a little more discussion on the end-to-end voter verifiable systems. I should also disclose up front that I'm an engineer, but just kind of in my part-time when working on an open source end-to-end voter verifiable system, just because, like everyone here, I'm concerned about election security and transparency, and I feel that the end-to-end systems can enhance that. But I think that it's important to do that in tandem with some of the other things that you guys were discussing. It can be hand-marked, should run on open source software, should also include publication of all the ballot images. And so I think that some of the concerns that you raised can be dealt with the right implementation of the end-to-end system.
Yeah, I'd love to be in touch with you. Can you just, I don't know if you have a card or something that you can leave at my table or just...
Sure, well, I can just tell you, I have a little website, it's called abacusvoting.com.
Can you spell it?
Abacus, like, it's a metaphor for transparent computing. So there's a little white paper there and a demo.
Great.
I'll take a look at that. And your name?
My name is Dylan.
Dylan, thank you.
I have on my website, countyiscast.org. On the left side, there's going to be some stuff about internet voting, and there was 3-4 years ago, a long report about, end-to-end internet voting. And there was a discussion there about end-to-end, that part of it. And I suggest you talk to me, go read that, and then go to the papers that are connected with it. The biggest problem, and you mentioned hand-marked. If you got hand-marked, that means you got paper. If you got paper, then the rest we can talk about.
Yeah,
Without
so-
the paper, hand-marked, don't talk to me.
I'm totally with you that
Okay.
we need a paper trail, and so I don't subscribe to any internet voting.
Okay,
Thank you all. A comment and a question. So cares about fair elections in the United States is a citizen. Not everybody has voting rights, and many of the kinds of work we do are actually ways that people who are not citizens or who have had their voting rights stripped from them can participate in as a way of advancing what they want in the country. So that's an important thing to remember, just again, about languaging. I'd also want to make a suggestion of a really specific thing that you can do if you start seeing some of the signs that a particular election is going to be stolen. I did this in 2011. There was a state Supreme Court election in Wisconsin that we were starting to see signs that looked like it was going to be manipulated. And I called the day before the election, got in touch with the campaign manager, and I said, I know you don't know me, but I do this kind of work, and we're seeing signs that your election may be manipulated. And if that happens, here are some of the things you may notice. And I listed a bunch of them to her. And I said, I know you don't know me, I know you don't trust me, but look for these things. And if you see them, here's my number. And I will be able to help you know who can help you investigate it. And funny, but they saw those exact things. And because I had predicted them, even though she didn't know me, she trusted me enough to call me, and we ended up having a relationship about this that led to a recount of that race, which led to the establishment of election integrity groups in the state of Wisconsin that are still working now.
Yeah.
It's a longer thing than I can say now, but we can talk about it in other ways. But so if you know how to look for those signs or research how to look for those signs, it's something that you can do. So that the lesson here is, if you can tell people what to look for, and then they see those things, that they will trust you more in your expertise. And then my question is, I think that we are looking at a situation, very likely in the presidential election next year, where a losing candidate might claim that the election has been stolen and start spouting some of the things that we've been saying for years about how we can't trust the election system. And it might be a candidate who I don't believe when he says, when he says the election is stolen. And I'm wondering what you would recommend that we as a movement do should that happen.
I have no idea. It's not perfect. There's an argument, in law called estoppel. He had a chance to Trump was asked to do certain things to secure our elections. We have to ask those things very clearly, make it very clear that when you ask someone to do something, they don't do something, it's kind of hard for them to complain about it. So if we asked him to do X, Y, and Z to secure our elections, or she, or whoever it is that you're thinking of, I don't know who it could possibly be. But if they're put on notice of the problems and have a chance to correct them and they choose not to, then you tell them to be quiet. It's not perfect, it's the best we got.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
I guess it's a really difficult, that is actually why we need to secure our elections. It's not just so you can get screwed either way on either side of this. Whether your candidate wins or loses, you can be on, it makes it very difficult because we don't have evidence-based elections. So you can't prove or disprove victories. But I do think you say, listen, if you thought there was a problem, why did you kill the election security bills? Why wouldn't you entertain the election security bills? How can you now? So we kept telling you that it's a difficult situation because then they'll say, well, you were saying it's insecure, right? But
That's exactly my concern.
and it's difficult. It puts us in a very, very, and that's why we have to do absolutely everything we can to make it as secure as possible.
I think also, Emily, that's one of the reasons that we're focusing, when I say the Count the Vote initiative, on verifying the accuracy of the count, so that we will have documentation either way. There's going to be a lot of controversy, and the best is to have evidence. So that's why we are trying to organize people to take photographs of poll tapes, to do public records requests for digital ballot images, and to work with groups like Dan North, Democracy Counts, that are trying to make that information public and compare it. I think the best we can do is document everything that we can. We are trying to have evidence-based elections, and therefore we need to gather evidence.
I think we're doing, an increasingly good job of that, of gathering evidence, and that we need to be, as we're looking forward, not very just to next year, we need to be looking at what do we plan to do with all that evidence that we're gathering, because I've seen us falter in that area before. So I just want to put that in people's minds as something to think about.
Okay. Well, I think that's the least of our problems, frankly. I think if he loses, and listen, he won and said the election was stolen. I mean, the man's crazy. I think that that's, the least of our problems. I think what we really got to worry about is the violence.
Me too.
See, I think that's, if we're not preparing for that, then we're not being realistic. Because we got to go back to Bush versus Gore. In 2000, the undertold story, of course, was all the violence in the streets from the pro-Bush forces. And I think that we need to be very, very astute that he's capable, and he's shown it with El Paso and so many other places, that he's capable of weaponizing people. And I think that that's more of a problem for us, that's going to be the ultimate security issue if he should lose. And I think that anybody who's not thinking that way is not thinking correctly. That's our biggest threat.
One of the other things, we worry about the vote count. But Mr. Trump, when he says elections are stolen, is talking about undocumented immigrants. And it's kind of hard to prove a negative that, no, they didn't vote. He's going to stand up there and say, oh, well, they had 3 million votes. And they're voting from the graves and so on. I don't know how you deal with that other than you just keep saying, prove it, and you can't. But we got to anticipate that.
Maybe one of our humorous public service announcements needs to be carrying absentee ballots into graveyards and trying to get the dead people in graveyards to vote.
I would like to remind people that a few years ago, Trump said if he lost or get impeached, there will be civil war. All right? And also, I have seen lots of Trump supporters, sort of mostly white, somewhat overweight men in T-shirts that are part of the NRA, talking about getting out there with their guns. So I think that this is an extremely important election for all of us on this level, and there could be violence.
Important,
And related to that, actually, is that the Yellow Vest movement that was largely, to the extent maybe there were some people who were legitimate, a lot of this was ginned up by Steve Bannon, I believe. You have to really watch out for, Cambridge Analytica in its new iteration, I guess, is Emmer data. I missed Emily's talk. Is she still here?
Emma.
Emma, is she still here? Oh, hi, Emma. All right, I mean, is that something, is that something you think we should be concerned about?
Definitely. That's basically what I was saying in my talk. I was talking about, how Cambridge Analytica personnel are still working with Trump on 2020. And, we absolutely need to be thinking that they're doing the same thing again.
And even though they can yellow vest us, right? But they get worse because we've got guns here.
It's going to be a grassroots movement. The problem of him claiming there's a coup and people, the election's been stolen or whatever, is a disinformation problem. No matter how secure your election is, he's going to say that.
And here's the other thing though, and I'd sort of like your thoughts on this, because I'm certainly not a propaganda expert, but I'm really interested in it, and I've been reading about it, and the thought that getting out in front of it and predicting it can maybe defuse it, and so that's something to maybe watch out for, in advance, that Trump is going to try to gin up a fake civil war and use Emmer data to stoke the flames and Russia or whoever bots to make it bigger and bigger and sort of emulate yellow vest plus guns. And then so that people don't fall for it and think that it is as many people as it might be portrayed to be.
yes.
Well, I would say that I actually think that's why we need to be pushing forward on trying to sort out the situation of Cambridge Analytica. There's virtually nobody seems to be pushing on this.
Yeah.
We're doing nothing. And this is a dual catastrophe, you know, like that is in progress here. You know, there's many, many layers to this. It's not just about securing data, but it's about securing that whole industry, which is running out of control without any transparency. We don't know what's going on or what they're doing. And why are we not doing something about that? Like, that's insane. You know, they set up shell companies and they, you know, operate below the radar, funneling loads of money around that we can't even see, we have no idea. You know, these are the priority things that we absolutely need to address if we're going to stop the violence that could result. Or, you know, these are more than just securing elections. We have to ensure our own security, but not by, you know, shutting people down, by enabling them and making them, you know, more, you know, making people safe and making people feel protected and that their communities are safe. It's essential. It's essential. And, you know, transparency is everything here, you know, but we have to keep pushing our legislators to act on it, you know, now. Maybe it's too late, I hope not, but we need to really push them, and we've not been doing enough.
Emma, do you know the status of the investigation that's going into Cambridge Analytica? There is one.
There are loads.
No, there isn't one.
There are loads, but, you know, I can't really comment on all of that at the moment. But we can talk afterwards.
Well, I had two things when I came up here, now I got my sixth. Barbara, you know, I commented at the end of Lulu's talk about the media, and you just mentioned that in 2000, you know, the violence was unreported.
That's correct.
So it just, and that was, you know, that was an appetizer at best to what we're staring down now. And so I agree with basically all of it. We got this problem and that problem, and they're all kind of the things that are overwhelming to our mindset because we were born into democracy, most of us, and we really just didn't think this was a possibility. So that's where I think the media comes back in, because when the fertilizer hits the fan, they have to have been cultivated. I mean, assuming they're not completely deep state and in bed with the, you know, future tyrants of the world, assuming that the New York Times, when push comes to shove, might actually, you know, stand up for democracy, you know, in a strong way. They need to be informed. They need to be cultivated. I really do think that there's a lot of smugness there, which leads to a lot of ignorance and a lot of just, you know, not a great enthusiasm about becoming informed. So I just think that really has to be a part of all that we do, is preparing the grounds for when things start moving very fast. And what the media says at that point, whether we like it or not, is going to be very important to how the narrative goes. They are a tremendously powerful force, which Trump knows is the reason he's called them the enemy of the people and trying to neutralize them. So that wasn't the point I had. The point I had two things. One was just a quick thing about audits. That Jen said risk-limited audits are basically in vogue, and that is true, but if anybody was here last year, they remember that I introduced an alternative audit protocol, which I think people from the presentation they gave found rather hard to understand. But it is, at least that's the feedback I got, but it is at my website, codered2020.com, there's a little button that says, you know, basically alternative audit protocol. And I appreciate anybody who's interested in audits and wanted to look at that. It has certain advantages over risk-limiting audits, mainly simplicity of execution and a kind of transparency, because it doesn't require, you know, quite as much of a mathematical approach. So it has pros and cons, but it's just something that's at codered2020.com. Click on the button, you can look at it. You know, feedback is appreciated. And then I am working on the rewrite of Code Red. And for those who are, you know about Code Red, I mean, it came out in 2012. There's a new edition in 2014, 2016, 2018, because the bastards are always coming up with new release and new material. But now I'm working on Code Red 2020, and I expect to kind of have it maybe out by December or January. there's a lot of new things happening that I haven't necessarily keyed in on. So what I would ask is everybody here and also, you know, following online or whatever, if you have something for me that you want to see emphasized, point of emphasis or point of correction, or something new that's come up that really would be important to cover relative to what we're looking at, which is this, you know, moving into the 2020 election, what we can expect, what kind of actions we can take, that are prophylactic or responsive actions, anything that you have that you would like to sort of get into a book that I hope, you know, will be helpful in the process of informing the media and the public about this whole situation. And, you know, in a way that's readable, that's not technical and, you know, eye-glazing.
Yes.
So, you know, to the extent that that can be a valuable resource, I'd like it to include things that you think are significant and important. So get in touch with me. My email is verifiedvote2004@AOL, but I have my cards out there on the table. And just, you know, either call, I got my phone number on the cards, call or shoot me an email, and let me know what you're working on that you think would be really worth developing and presenting to the public, okay? Thank you.
Okay, let me ask a question to our guest here. Do you want to ask a question or say anything? You.
No, I think I've covered all my concerns
Okay.
or issues.
Because it's hard to get the microphone, so that's it.
Yeah, just one comment on the Civil War. We remember how violent elections are in Kenya, India,
Yes.
and other places. You know, just one, we already have images of this kind of thing. But I wanted to endorse Jennifer's TM solution type messaging in several ways, and perhaps get a sense of the conference document where we would have a type message that we could send to, 1, our representatives, 2, our local media, 3, have in our pockets when we discuss these things with people we meet. All right, just point by point. I think you've already started with your acronym. And what made me think of this was meeting my new idealistic centrist Democratic representative, who is the first Democrat elected from my District 7 in New Jersey since I came of age politically in the 60s. Tom Malinowski is his name, and he sometimes gets on NVR. And he's a sweet guy and very open, and we have a lot of largely proper representatives, and they should be amenable to this. So I think we have a conference now, and we could have someone to take responsibility to draw up a sense of the conference with these points. It could be extremely valuable.
Okay, and I think that's a fantastic idea, and I will say in the meantime, I actually really did write us something that has all the stuff I mentioned anyway, which include, it's called Election Security Goals, and it's on my Medium account. It's called Election Security Goals, and it's on my Medium account, so medium.com, if you type in Jennifer Cohn, I have an account, and I've written a bunch of different articles, and that is one of the, probably one of the relatively
Such a document should be sent to everyone here. We're all registered with our email address.
That's what I was trying to print out before I got over here.
But I mean,
But yes,
a version
yes.
for each of these audiences.
That would be great. Yes, we can maybe, I could try to email it around. I can get the email list.
And there would have to be a sense of the conference if there is a disagreement here.
Right, and I think also that's one of the things that we're really working out with the Count the Vote initiative, like that's why we're trying to bring groups to the table. I'm going to be starting an election security leadership conference call that will be able to have dialogue about these issues and try to, it may not be a document that has a complete agreement, but there may be a spectrum of agreement. I think there's a great deal of agreement about hand-marked paper ballots, but there also may be caveats from people in the disability rights community. So I think that what the Count the Vote initiative is going to try and do is create a template that has a great deal of buy-in from a great number of people and has very efficient, compressed messaging, something that's really user-friendly, easily understood, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kind of.
And I do think my article is easily user-friendly. One of the things, I think it's great, the relationships are important in forming those relationships. I also think sometimes when you're working with a bigger group, part of the reason why progress is so slow is because getting everyone to buy into a message is really difficult. So when you have a big board of directors and you're working with lots of different groups, it could take a year. I'm not saying it will take a year. That's why I just went ahead and did it. And I don't think most of it is controversial, including how I phrased anything. I don't think really any of it, frankly, is controversial. The only real controversy has been the slowness with which some of the scientists, not the ones fortunately who were here, who've been fantastic, but some of the other scientists have been just very slow in acknowledging what are really common sense concerns with ballot marking devices, but we really needed their buy-in to those concerns because in order to be taken seriously by Congress, they want to know the scientists see that you're right. So in any event, I don't think there's anything controversial in my article or handout, but I very much look forward to one that does have buy-in from additional groups. In the meantime, if you want to get it going and talk, know what to say to your congresspeople, I do think I wrote it all out already in my article.
Excellent. If I may suggest 3 levels. One is the one-liner, which expands the initial. The second would be a 50 or 100-word explanation of what it is. And the third, if someone is interested, would be the examples of what damage the opposite has done. And we've gotten that in this extremely rich conference. I mean, if you would draw from the people's experience and what they've proposed, how they've made changes, for those Congress people who are actually curious, and even for those media people who might be curious. Anyway, that would be an ideal document.
I just want to say also that Jenny and I are really very much on the same page in terms of those guidelines that she suggested. I support all of them, 100%. We are not in disagreement at all.
No, Lulu, this is just to give you an example. Lulu and I agree on just about everything. I mean, I don't even know anyone in this community who I probably agree with more. And you can see we still clash because there's nuance. Oftentimes it's the nuance. And that's why I think it does take, sometimes it just takes a really long time to get stuff out.
Well, I think part of it is also about, in terms of, it's not that the disagreement, I think, doesn't come in terms of what the goals are. Sometimes the disagreement comes in terms of strategies and techniques and what is the best way to get to that goal. And those can sometimes be difficult conversations, and there's legitimate differences of opinion about that. But they're important conversations. But I just want to make sure it's really clear that I completely support all of the guidelines that Jenny said. When I read her Medium articles, for the most part, I'm like, oh my God, yes, 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 yes.
So this is a very simple question that I ask both of you. How do I get your letters? Your letter. How am I going to get your letter?
Oh, it's not a letter, it's an article. It's on your
Oh, no, you know what? So I need a website. I don't even have a website. So no, I'm sorry. You go to medium.com. You need to go to, she wants the article. It's on medium.com, so medium.com, and yeah, and so what it is anyone can publish articles on Medium. Oh, really? You just type in Jennifer Cohn on Medium? Or just type in Jennifer Cohn election security goals.
Oh, I did that just now, actually, and I pulled it up.
Yeah.
Oh, good, thank you.
So speaking of presentations, we've had several people asking for speaker presentations and PowerPoints and things like that. If you'd be willing to email them to us using leadtransfer.com, either to Richard Tam or Jim, or Edit Enlightened Films, we'll either use them in the video or they'll post them on the website to make them accessible to attendees.
The Facebook page for this conference, and I know a lot of people hate Facebook, and I will make one other suggestion. I hate Facebook, I detest Twitter even more. But if you want to get the message out, there it is. If you want to say something, here it is, over 100,000 followers. That's insane. I was sending out messages to somewhere between 15 and 20,000 people on Facebook about this conference. If you want to get the message out, there are your channels. Now for this conference, if you go to National, if you search for Facebook, Voting Rights Task Force, and you will then see National Voting Rights Task Force Conference. Please post there, please put your comments up there. We also have on our NVRTF.org site, you can sign up and log in, and we'll try to get a discussion threads going. We had to get this conference done first, and then we're going to turn around and try to make that Facebook better. But there are 2 places, as well as, Lulu, do you have any website or something?
Yeah, we can on social media. You can follow me at Lulu Friesdat on Twitter. We have a website, smartelections.us, where I'd love to have people sign up with their email address so we can stay in touch with you. This is me.
Yes, and I would like to make a big point. You know, the founders, for whatever reasons, they had a whole lot of problems, a whole lot of issues. But they made one assumption that in the current era that we're realizing is not correct, and that is that the fourth estate would be a primary and wonderful check. That is the media, would be a wonderful check on government, that it would hold government accountable. And what we found out now is, of course, is that media is being subverted as a propaganda arm for the government. Still, the reality in this age, when you look at the public, is that the public still, even with all the social media that's been built out, they're still clamoring for content. And most groups make huge errors in not using YouTube. YouTube, a good video, 3 to 4, 5 minutes, 4, 8, 12 million hits. Average. I mean, we need to learn to utilize that platform much more effectively. That's why people are using their podcasts, their animations, their videos, just telling and instructing people. And a lot of what we did today could be condensed. I mean, we've done the last 2 days, could be condensed into appropriate videos, educational videos on different topics. You could create a whole channel under this, I mean, seriously, it doesn't take a while to do a channel on YouTube. But all of this is capable, and it's empowering, and it's powerful. And I think that, we worry about the New York Times, the rest of them, they drive me crazy, all of them. But I've learned that a lot of the organizing, some of the most powerful organizing I've been involved in was independent of any of the major stations. Because we just built our independent media, our independent education, spawned whole movements from it. And that's where we need to be thinking, in addition to everything else.
You're 100% right. I've often, for the longest time I was trying to get the media to take some of these issues seriously, and at a certain point I thought, you know what, I've just got to become part of the media. And I've got to start writing about it. We all need to become part of the media, and I did actually, by the way, start a YouTube channel, and I did 2 videos. Mine did not get the type of response that you described it. I got 2,000 views on the last one, which is about ballot working devices, and I do think it's a good video.
Yeah.
I'll work on it. But.
Well, my social is so weird. My organization is very small. The one thing we have is a social media director, and she's brilliant. And there are a lot of good young people out here who have her kind of talent. And so, we get, people think I have 20 staff all over the country. I have nothing approximating that, but that's because of her ability to amplify. So, so amplification is so important. And, and I think that that's another part of where we're not all doing our best work is connecting on those kinds of strategies, right? For amplifying our voices. So I think we can do some serious organizing. Yes.
Wow. Yeah. It's actually kind of where I want to go. A little background. Many people in here are veterans of politics and of organizing. Most of the people I work with woke up on the 9th of November 2016 and were like, obviously, what the hell happened? And when they started getting moving, they wanted to do things. And one of the things that's nice about that kind of spontaneous movement is you get many different kinds of people, but they have very different backgrounds, very different levels of expertise, and very different amounts of free time. So the one thing I spent most of my time since then thinking about is how do you best make use of a very wide range of people. And I really want to call out what Emily said about not everybody has to be an expert. One of the most useful things you can do is get the expertise into forms like the video we showed you. 2.5 minutes that makes people go, oh, or when Benny presented and we all went on the voter tampering and it took just a couple of minutes and all of a sudden people were like, what? That wakes people up. And then if you have tasks, have short tasks, medium-sized tasks, have long ones. There are tons of people out there who are, this is an issue I'm interested in, I talk to them about, we all try to convince each other how important it is. People are all over this issue. 5 years ago, crickets.
Right.
Right?
That's what Emily was talking about.
Exactly.
Success that we ought to be celebrating.
Really take advantage of this. I'm talking about thousands of people in California, all of whom care about this issue a little bit.
Yes.
If you can bundle useful things to do, it will spread through that network and people will do them.
Oh.
Please take advantage of that. I mean, we should all please take advantage of that. The complicated idea, get it to something that you can actually express in a few sentences. We have people who've never been involved in politics calling their voters people every day when there's an issue. They wait for an email, they see it, they go. This is all they're doing, but they're doing it in such large volume. So simplifying and clarifying are hugely valuable in getting it, and then getting it out. The networks exist to get it out. Some of them are visible like YouTube and Medium and Twitter, and some of them are just informal networks. They're there. I just want to make sure, I mean, this is in everybody's mind, but I really want to emphasize this. My real lesson for this is 2018. 2018 was won because people ran for offices that no one had run for in years, and people got mad. That's basically what happened. And then, they're mad.
When you said simplify and clarify, that brings me back to the previous generation of social media, which is talk radio. I made 30 calls for one candidate in 2004. Very quickly I learned if you cannot get it out in one paragraph, you stood the chance that the guy's going to cut you off, the host. So I would sit there for 40 minutes waiting for my turn, and while I'm sitting there for 40 minutes, I'm running my message through again and again and again. Towards the end, I wanted being pushed to the front of the line because certain hosts knew they were going to get a good call. And something else was also brought out. One of the other things when you do that or write a letter to the editor is you got to have a hook into whatever the conversation is. You know, if they're talking about baseball, don't call in about elections because you're not going to get on. Okay, but if you think about whatever they're talking about, if it happens to be the election, yeah, well, I want to talk about getting the vote count right. And things like that. Practice that, and you'll learn how to be concise.
Thank you. I'd like to circle back to a couple of things that have been brought up before, just to add some depth. As an election administrator in 2 different jurisdictions, I thought it was really important ahead of a very intense election that I partnered with the police chief to give a briefing to the force. They got a list of all the election laws. They were explaining the roles of people coming in and out, the election challengers, the election protection people, everyone who had a right to be there and why. And it was really important because in 2004, we had an enormous turnout. There were traffic jams and tempers, and the police were ready for that. They were ready to direct traffic. If we can get them to do that for this upcoming 2020, I think we can avert some of the horrors that we anticipate, but it has got to be a collaboration between election officials, law enforcement, citizens groups. If you have a citizen oversight over public safety. If we don't get a plan now, we won't be prepared. So that's just a recommendation. It can be done, and it has been done. I want to go back to the whole question that was raised about involving young people in what we're doing. And I would love to get your ideas. I'd like to share what the Michigan Election Reform Alliance has done. So we started in 2004 with our Neuromonitors program. And we went out and recruited citizens, especially people who were comfortable with their local elections, but they wanted to help with areas that were not so comfortable. So we managed to deploy people all over the state as election challengers, which is a legal category in our state that allows you to go into the polling place. You have the right to look at everything. You can't talk to voters, and you can talk to the chairperson and challenge things that are going on, procedures that are going on, the way that voters are being identified and talked to about whether they're registered or not. This is all fair games. We're a challenger. The challenger has rights to be there, and if they are interfered with, it's a felony. So our people went in with a fair amount of power, and they used it very effectively. They found things like stacks of blank ballots just sitting in the middle of the polling place with no one watching them. There was one precinct where people were being given an extra ballot if they wanted to vote twice.
Oh my God.
In one place they were voting with pencils. That's illegal. A ballot is an illegal document. You can't do it with a pencil. So there were all kinds of things. We also trained Neuromonitors to be exit pollsters. And we got a heck of a lot of great information that way, which allowed us to do some amount of election security investigation. Now we're going to try to modernize our program because we're going to put the training online. We're shooting videos to show people how to do certain things, how to talk to voters correctly, how to talk to election officials correctly, so that people will be rehearsed in these behaviors. They will have a checklist of everything that they're looking for, and they write down what time they saw this happen, so that all the transgressions are noted and challenges are filed. And those challenges have to be dealt with by the election hierarchy timely. So that got a lot of young adults very engaged. And as I mentioned earlier about our successful drive for redistricting reform, we couldn't have done it without hundreds of young adults in our 5,000 person volunteer force. So there's always something that you can think of for people to do, and if you just give them a little training, they'll do it. And they'll be very excited about it. So, and I'm interested in other ideas that any of you have about involving young adults. And that means also down to high school. In some cases, they can do that.
So the training's going to be online, like YouTubes and stuff, and then some written
It'll
stuff?
be embedded in the training site, yeah.
That's wonderful. I just want to say how much I trust this movement for YouTubes and different things. And I'm very happy I'm going to invest in TrustVote.TV.
That's how we trained 5,000 petition circulators without having them all in one room. They were all trained online. They took an exam at the end, and if they passed it,
So in your training program, if it seems appropriate also for California, which might be, is there a way that we can share the training?
Well, certainly the concepts. I think the specific laws and statutes are not going to match.
No, but some of the things about talking to the police and create more safety, and I mean, the more we spread this, the better.
Yeah, if we prepare people, I just want to put in a pitch for election monitors. Benton Harbor is a community on the west side of Michigan. It is a majority minority community, and it's always been downtrodden by Whirlpool Corporation. And they told us that after we sent in the Neuromonitors, they had the first honest election they had in 30 years. And that was a big deal for that community. Okay.
time there because we have social hour and I have a couple of closing remarks. But we will continue on with the few there. Barbara?
Yes, Jen, I was just going to say, you know, the election, the trainings that we do for young people, and it really is Gen Z, millennials, and high schoolers that we do, you know, it's a 2.5-day training event. And it's really in-depth. Everybody walks out knowing how to do the elevator speech. You know, we do that kind of communications, we do coalition building, we do all the laws, you know, from specific to the states, what they need to know about what's going on, how to interact on the ground, how to build power, etc. And I can tell you, it's been amazing because we tell them that we're training them to be leaders, to enhance their leadership skills. We tell them very strongly that that we're training them to be a trainer, and they go out and they actually recruit people. They build organizations. I mean, it's amazing what they have done. I mean, they have blown me away because I didn't anticipate what we were creating. We're getting ready to do, as I mentioned, one in November in Montgomery, Alabama. Even since I've been here, people have been writing me because we're trying to organize one in Mississippi, and people are telling me that the date that was selected is too late. They want to do it early. So, you know, that's the kind of, you know, investment. You know, I think it's really serious people investment. When you sit down and you counsel, you talk to people, you answer their questions, you really help them to build their skills. And that kind of, we don't do enough of that. There's not enough of these kinds of programs. And I just think that the more we do that across the nation. Last time, when I first did the first one, I said we gotta have a whole section on election security. I reached out to somebody, everybody in here knows, and said that. And I said I need somebody to come and do that, and they didn't send anybody. But anyway, life is life. But that's something where we have to merge into the programming in the future. But I am a huge advocate of youth leadership investment and putting them out there because they're the best at motivating other young. Nobody else can do it like they can.
Okay, this is a little different. I usually stay right on this topic of election security, but if we're really planning for the 2020 election, and we're really planning to defeat Trump, this is the partisan side. As one person who just came in reminded me, Trump has been warning of civil war and violence if the election is stolen from him. And he is planning, he is working on this fertile soil of Fox mind-washed people, brainwashed people, and we need to prepare for this in the strongest possible way by speaking out incredibly strongly that he is being totally irresponsible and that this is possibly an impeachable offense, that he's threatening violence and civil war if he doesn't win this election. I think that could be considered an impeachable offense, and that he is preparing the soil for violence if he doesn't get his way. I think that needs to be included in our planning.
Thank you, Richard.
Yeah.
Next, Dan, want to say anything?
No, I
Okay, next.
But I'm just, this 2 days has been amazing in the amount of information and knowledge. The information and knowledge that's held by this group. And when I came here, I had an idea, and now it's even greater than before. And what I would like to see, in thinking of the young people, thinking of the country waking up to the issues of election and security and just what is going on,
I would love to see, and I can't do it, like an umbrella website called, everything elections or something like that, that people can very easily go. They don't have to know Audit USA or Smart Elections or something else. There's just one place where everybody, all the work is listed there. And then I see as the states individually have different programs, that can be listed on the website, just like these ideas from Jan, where how the community works, the elected works with the police, different ideas, that it would be all in one place. People could write in about what's going on in their state, and we could share. It would have all the videos, it would have everything. I don't know if it's too big a project, but I envision that that would help the country wake up.
Thank you.
I had a small grant that did a study in the Central Valley on low voters. There were 2 out of the last 5 elections, and it happened to coincide with the 2016 election. This was a 45-minute interview with a sample of the population, but just the Latinos, to keep it kind of contained, so we controlled it. I'm not going to talk about the whole study. That's not my point. My point is that I have, after that, I did an intervention. So I ran election day events in 3 towns, and we have some wonderful best practices because they were 8-hour events in 3 towns. And what we've learned just from doing that and from some of the obstacles that I faced in communities that don't really want some interventions. These are not things that we're speaking about a lot here, but I think that it would be nice before the next election to have other events on topics around the whole process of what gets someone from A to Z, really, in terms of the elections. There's a lot of obstacles along the way, and I need to publish more of what I've found. But I think it would be really great if we could have another conference on some of those, what's in between A and Z. So we've been talking a lot about Z and a little bit in between, and I think there's just a whole lot in the middle. The other thing I want to say is that because I was alarmed, and spoke before our Board of Supervisors when I found out that they were going to mail out the ballots to everybody's home for a number of reasons. But a lot of the people are getting ballots and they don't even realize they have ballots. But what this is translating into is when they show up on election day, they're getting provisional ballots. So in the 3 elections where we were running events, we had wonderful turnout, but the boxes with the provisional ballots, the pink ballots, were overflowing onto the floor, all over the place. They didn't even have boxes big enough. And in some cases, we had more provisional ballots than we had regular ballots. There's a security issue with that in the sense that the person's name is on there. They may not put their middle initial. They may get their birth date wrong. They may put their address, which is slightly different from the one that's in the vote. And those votes will get thrown out. These are the provisional ballots, and we're getting more and more every election, because anytime something is slightly off, like you don't know your party, or you go to the wrong location, you went to that location last time, but now your location is at another location, you get handed a provisional ballot. So there's many, many reasons why you get these, and the numbers are going up exponentially. And now with all these ballots being mailed out, some to homes that might be empty or have other people there, those people, if they do show up on election day or to one of these kiosks that they're going to have, are very likely to get a provisional ballot. So this topic of provisional ballots plays into the election security end-to-end that you're talking about on election day. Now we're going to have a whole time period in which people can vote. They've got the ballot in their homes. There's security issues all over this. And from my perspective, we're urging people to go in person. Do not mail it. Do not put it in your mailbox. You go in person and you talk. You want to make sure that your ballot actually gets into the hands of the people. Or if you do mail it, then you go to the post office. But we need to get these types of suggestions out, particularly in light of the provisional ballot it's just really blown up. So this whole issue, I just want to bring that up. Because the person's name is actually with their vote. And so in small communities, if somebody wanted to check how so-and-so voted, well, their name is sitting on the actual ballot. So that, some of them are telling us they don't have security, and they've been spoken to sternly about how they voted. So, okay.
Do our panels have any final words here?
I just have a cleanup announcement to make. When this ends and we break for the social, please take everything with you to the other room so we can start cleaning up this room, because it's going to take quite a bit of time. Thank you.
Well, I just wanted to, I'm so glad you raised that, because the overuse, misuse of provisional ballots is a huge problem. But that's why one of our #1 organizing strategies is early voting. And we have a whole strategy that is, motivate people to early vote, so that if they get there and there's any problem, they walk out. They don't vote provisionally. We tell them don't do it. And we come out and tell us what the problem was, so that we can solve the problem, right? And we can solve whatever the problem is. They say you got a mail ballot, go get it. Bring it with you. We tell people to bring everything that the Board of Elections has sent them, even the sample ballot, whatever, with them. Put it in your purse, your pocket, bring it with you, because you don't know what's going on. You want to have that to fight. And we use all of that to fight for voters to be able to vote. So we teach people, vote early. There's a problem. They say that they're going to put on provisional ballot. Say, I'll be back. Walk out and tell us what's wrong. And that's why, we try to do these, that's the system. 50% of all African Americans vote early. 37 to 40% of all Latinos vote early. And we need to just have really strong intervention strategies to assist communities doing the early voting. And that's why it's, we got to take advantage of it. The people who we usually can't help are the people who voted the last general election day, the last hour. Those are the hardest voters to assist when they're running in there with 15 minutes to go. And if they got a problem, it's hard to resolve. So I just want to, really urge that's, we should talk some about other strategies. I love what you're doing with the 8 hours. That's beautiful. Love to talk more about
festival. It became a festival.
I love that. I just love it. Let's talk some more.
And I imagine you also encourage people to check their registration. Right?
Oh, absolutely. We're big on verify your registration, early. We do that. In fact, we're teaching churches how to do it, where they do their whole congregation. They just pull it out, and we, teaching them how to do it on site. And everywhere we go, we teach people how to do that. Plus, we teach people how to contact, your Congress people, 202-224-3121. We just saturate that information also for other reasons. So yes, absolutely.
As we used to say in Chicago in the 60s, vote early and often.
No, vote early.
I just want to
vote early. Legally.
One thing in here, that there may be, it may be that something like that needs a legislative fix, because you're trying to fix things at the, granular level instead of at the macro level. And Jim would know more about this than me, but I was told about those problems also, where everybody was getting these absentee ballots and they didn't know, they hadn't requested it, and then they're coming in there and being forced to vote. But I think at that point, what you need is a legislative fix.
Yes.
You need a statute to say that voters cannot be sent absentee ballots unless they request them. Then they're looking for them, they're prepared, and they're anticipating that, and you don't get that trap. But Jim would know more about it. This specifically California issue.
I think there's a tendency in California to move away of voting in the polls, and they're sending everybody absentee ballots. And what you have to tell them is when you get that, you have to look at it, because your polling place very well may disappear, which I think is happening in Alameda County in the next election.
That's the problem.
It's new. No, but some of this seems like a voter trap. Some of this just seems like people are just gonna walk right into this, and you're gonna have a ton of.
They call themselves trying to be like Oregon. And that's what I mean, it's
California, let me say the rules, and I'm trying to follow them, the rules about who can vote and which party in the primary are still, in my opinion, up in the air in California. The best thing you should do, tell people, is to, if you intend to vote in XYZ party for president, sign up for that party now. And if you're working with a campaign, they need to tell their people to sign up for that party. They did not do this in 2016, and we got a predictable mess. Okay, ma'am, did you want something quick?
When I was working for people would come in and sign up like that. Would sign in, you know, like I said, look at your license and sign exactly the same way. Diebold is the company that's checking those signatures in my county, San Mateo County. Get them to get their licenses out because they just chuck those votes. If the signatures are not the same as in their licenses, it's very important.
That's why we're doing this.
Any more comments?